saying in the bottom.
Oh.
Yes, finally. Okay. Yeah. So, hey, everybody. Yes.
We are?
See, yes. Okay. So, we've had
Hi.
a lot of technical
I
difficulties.
see it. Cool.
And I'm so sorry for the very long delay, but our computers are being very bad. So, most of the time. Hopefully, we'll do better next time. But
I mean, are both of us showing up? I want to see what we look like. I'm sorry. I've never been live before. This is very exciting to me if you can't tell.
Okay, so
hi.
Yeah, so I guess we can just introduce ourselves.
Yeah, you go first.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Carynn. My pen name was C. Marie Bohley, so it might call me that on some of this stuff, but I'm Carynn, and some of you are probably from Writer's Block because I had a few people on there. So my blog, and we have our links to, like, I have my Goodreads account and Precipice, which is a short story I publish on Amazon, in the description. So, and obviously, this is Teen Authors Talk Writing. So I'm 15. I'll be 16 in 2 months. So, yeah. Okay, Hannah.
So, my name is H.G. Carynn just called me Hannah, which,
I'm sorry.
Fine. But, wait a second. I'm the only one showing up in the live video. That's weird. Why is it only?
Oh, hold on. Let me switch it over. You can choose who's being
Well, I mean, I'm sure everybody likes seeing my face, but yeah, I did my makeup for like a half hour before this. Anyway, yeah. So I'm HG. I've been writing for like 6 or 7 years. And I have a culture podcast. I've been published in a bunch of magazines, but most notably and recently in an anthology, which I'm pretty sure the link is in so the description. So yeah, that is me. I've been published in a bunch of magazines, but most notably. So yeah, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so we have some questions that we got from. I have some from my blog. We also had some topics that we wanted to cover. So Hannah was saying that we should talk about some things that people don't usually ask about writing.
Agreed.
Like, so what were some of the ones you were saying?
So I have them written down. It's still only showing one of us at a time, which I don't like, but I can go back and forth.
Yeah, I'll switch over to you right now. I can choose who it's switching over to, but it's just really weird.
Okay. So I wrote down a couple of questions, but I know that we got some from some of your readers before. And also, by the way, if there's anybody watching this right now, you can leave us comments in the chat bar on the side. So, yeah. So anyway, one of the questions that I had was something I really like talking about as a writer. And so I thought, maybe somebody could find this interesting if we discussed it. And so that was the question of what's your favorite aesthetic to write in? Not like your favorite genre necessarily, because I don't think the two are the same, but like what aesthetic do you really like writing in?
Oh my gosh.
Go.
Maybe you should go first. I have to think about it.
Okay. I guess I'll go first. So favorite aesthetic. So I really like the aesthetic of things that like look really cool, but maybe not in the setting you usually find them. So like specifically here, I'm thinking of like parking lots at night. I really like dark aesthetics. I really like the aesthetic of like road trips, and I really like the aesthetic of museums, how there's sort of like plants and marble. And I really love any combination of red, white, and gold. I find that really aesthetically pleasing. Or like neon lighting when it's like blue, and I don't know, I just like writing in those aesthetics. So it's like if I get an aesthetic for a story, then I tend to build my story around that idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like for me, I usually come up with. No, you go ahead.
No, I just yeah, I actually like the things that you said. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why it's a hard question for me. I think I'm just sort of having a mind blank right now for that.
That's okay. So, like usually for me, I'll come up with an aesthetic before I come up with a plot. Like I'll get an idea like, okay, this is what your world looks like. Now build the world and put some people in it. And that's usually how I come up with
Yeah,
the
I
idea
do
for
that
most.
on I usually save a bunch of stuff on Pinterest that I think has to do with my word. I
Yeah,
think I might have actually
do that.
I know we talked about that once.
Yeah, I think I have you on a couple of my Pinterest boards.
I really like when there are like flowers and they're either burning or there's blood on them. I just like flowers, like
Yeah.
stuff with that kind of.
That's a nice aesthetic. Yeah, I like that too.
It's really hard switching back and forth like this.
Yeah,
because
I don't get why we can't just go side by
it's
side,
weird.
but whatever.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'll just try to switch it over to whoever's talking.
Yeah,
so should we answer one of the questions that I got on my blog?
Yes. Oh, and by the way, I'm just curious, can whoever is watching this introduce yourself in the live chat and say where you found us from? Because I'm just curious if it's like just our family watching this or if I think it says 3 people are watching right now. So can you just say who you are and how you found us? That would be cool.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, let me look at the questions because I think I got 7 questions on my blog. Let me just check. So the first one is, who's your biggest inspiration? So Hannah, do you want to answer that or?
Sure. So my biggest inspiration has got to be, is this living or dead?
I don't think it matters. I think a lot of dead people are inspiring, so.
I would say that my biggest dead inspiration has to be J.R.R. Tolkien, which is probably cliche, considering I don't even especially write fantasy as much as I used to, but I just love how he uses words, and I love Lord of the Rings. But I guess my favorite living inspiration, to go to that, is Neil Gaiman, who is an incredible urban fantasy writer. Like American Gods is one of my favorite books. Good Omens is one of my favorite books. I love the way that he takes aesthetics, and I like the way that he deals with human emotion. I think that it's very like poignant. Is that a good word? But it's very expressive, his writing, and I really like that. So Carynn, you.
I also don't want to sound cliche, but I was thinking about this the other day because people ask who inspires you a lot, and I feel like there are a lot of people who inspire me, like for different aspects of writing and being a writer. I want to say God, honestly, because I think writing is such a godlike act to be able to, it's almost like creating something from nothing. And I think that might be one of the things that I like about writing the most, because it just feels really powerful. So I don't know if that's an acceptable answer, but I think that's my answer.
Oh, that makes sense to me. Also, my friend Robin is watching this. Hi, babe. I love you. Anyway.
Okay, so should we move on to another one of our questions, or what do you think?
Yeah, let's go to one of the other questions you had, because I don't have like all that many written down. So
okay, yeah, all right. So the next one is, how do you deal with writer's block, which is such a big question.
I'll let you take that one first.
All right, yeah. Let me switch this over. Well, I guess my blog is called Writer's Block. It really depends on the person, because there are different reasons for like your inspiration to not be flowing, which so you first have to figure out why it's hard for you to write. If you're stuck in your current project, like maybe for me, I really feel like I have to have my points plotted out for whatever book I'm writing. So if I don't plot out like the next few chapters, sometimes I'll feel like I've reached a dead end, which then I'll kind of like put that project away for a while, and then it can be hard for me to come back to. So if it's because you need to do more planning, or some people can't do planning, so it really depends on your writing style. And also, I recommend stepping away from your book for a while if you feel like you're having problems with it. But also, put it somewhere that's in sight. Like, don't put it completely out of mind. For me, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just take a page from like one of my favorite one of my favorite scenes, and I'll just put it up in my room and just hang it up on my wall so I can't let myself forget it. And other times I'll like take someone who I think looks like one of my characters. I'll like take a picture and I'll put it as the backdrop, what's it called? Background on my computer. So when I go into it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I have to start writing again. So yeah, it's different for everyone. There are lots of different ways, and different things might be inspiring to different people, like Pinterest, website. You might be able to find like websites that inspire you, or blogs. For me, reading about writing a lot. But yeah, do you have anything you want to add?
I guess the question was, how do you deal with writers? Into like this sort of downward spiral. I'm holding a pen. Look at how authory of me that is. I tend to sort of go into this little like downward spiral, spiral, where I think like, I can't write this thing. Oh my gosh, that means I'm never going to be able to write again. What is the meaning of life if I can't write? If I can't write, I have no other career. I'm going to have to work at McDonald's for my entire life. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no purpose. I have no soul. I have no meaning. I might as well not exist. Why do I exist? Why was I born? And then I come up with an idea how to end the scene, and then it's goes.
That's
no, but I will say, listening to music really helps, because I do this very unusual thing where I think it's unusual, but I do this thing that I find kind of unusual, where I will like imagine a music video of my story set to that song. So that helps, I guess.
Yeah, I do that too.
Does that make sense? I don't know. Corinne's screen is
Also
frozen, so I can no longer see Corinne. So I'm just talking to you guys into the void
how about
until
now?
I get Corinne back. Oh, I hear
Okay.
it. Okay, your screen froze for a second. You were like itching your eye, and it was really funny. Anyway, yeah, listening to music or being depressed. Those are how I deal with writer's block.
Yeah. For me, sometimes I'll just be having really bad writer's block, and then suddenly just something will inspire me. Like I'll read something on the internet, or I'll read a quote. There's this like, I don't remember what the website's called. I wish I could. Maybe I'll put a link in the comments when I get a chance. But there's this website that does like a random inspiring quote. And this one time I went on and it said something that perfectly fit what my problem was, and I was just able to get back to her.
Oh, that's great.
Also for me, if I take breaks a lot in between, like if I just write a paragraph and then I take a big break, then I'll just end up slowly drifting away. I read Stephen King's autobiography on writing recently, and he was saying how for him it's difficult to step away from his book at all without abandoning it. He said that it's good to keep on writing while it's rich in your mind, and you like the idea is what. So he just like writes as fast as he can. He just gets it all out, which obviously for some people that can kind of burn them out. But for me, that's what's helped the most with just continuing.
Yeah, writing. Maybe it's because I write fan fiction, but I have this weird thing where I like everything to sound good the first time. And usually if I'm writing a story that I'm going to post on the internet, such as fan fiction, I'll only do a couple drafts of it, but maybe even just one draft and then a beta. But when I'm doing multiple drafts of things, I find that sometimes it's really, really hard to get back into drafting a completed story because it doesn't feel as exciting. You know what I'm saying? Have you been there where it's like you've finished the story, you know what's going to happen, you've explored the characters, but now you have to edit, and that's just not fun because you don't have the like excitement of, oh, where's it going to go next and what scene am I going to create, you know?
Yeah, I've actually I finished like 3 well, they weren't really book length. They were more like novellas, I guess. And I finished the first draft of like 3 different novellas, and I just could not go back to the other draft because I didn't like the first draft enough. And I think it's because I didn't give it enough space right after I finished, so I wasn't really looking at it with fresh eyes. So that might have been my problem. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a thing.
So what do you want to do now?
Another
question?
Yeah, do you want me to read one of my questions now?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So the next question I had was, what is the hardest character type to write?
Oh my goodness. So you want me to start with this one?
Yeah, you can.
I've been trying. I think honestly for me it's not the different character types that are harder to write. It's more what character types are hardest not to write, because I always seem to be using the same character types over and over. But one thing that's hard for me is characters who aren't sarcastic, because when I'm writing, my dialogue always takes on this like banter.
Yeah,
so I always like
writing.
witty lines. I find it hard to write more natural dialogue because people aren't as witty and exciting as I make them out to be, which is kind of sad, but yeah. So for me, anyone who's not really sarcastic, like people who are quieter, I mean, it's hard to write them without like taking them out of the scene. Like people who don't talk as much, like without completely ignoring them.
Yeah. Well, that's weird to me because
I mean?
you don't strike me as a very sarcastic person. So, but it's easier for you to write sarcastic characters.
Yeah.
I would say the hardest character. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
I was just gonna say the hardest character for me personally to write is like a nice type of character, or like the boy next door or whatever, like the sweet girl, because I'm not an especially nice person. So I'm nice, but I'm not like nice, you know? So I have trouble writing characters because then it always sounds like not genuine. Like it always sounds like it's a facade that they're putting up, because usually when I'm nice, it's a facade I'm putting up. So it's tricky for me to write like the nice guy. Or I think my first book I ever wrote, the guy who I wrote as the nice guy actually turned out to be the villain because I just couldn't do it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So yeah. That's that. What is your next question? I guess we can just sort of alternate. Oh, by the way, if anybody go ahead.
I was saying also, if we have topics that arise from these questions, then we can obviously move on to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if any of the 4 people watching this have a question, you can put it in the chat, no matter how stupid it is, or how stupid it is. Like, there is no stupid question. We'll answer anything. Yeah. We'll answer embarrassing questions about our writing. We can take it.
And yeah. Let's see. The next one is, what's your favorite thing about NaNoWriMo? So here, why don't I switch over to you, because I answered the last question first.
Sure. So I've done NaNoWriMo 4 times, I think, and I would say my favorite part is the forum, because I really like doing word sprints with other people. However, none of the NaNoWriMo novels that I've wrote were interesting enough to hold my attention. So I actually don't usually finish my NaNoWriMo novels. I think the only times I finished it were when I wrote them much shorter. But since switching to the adult NaNoWriMo, I have not been able to finish.
For me, it's probably the deadline, but recently it's been harder for me to actually meet the deadline. It's because, like, I think one time I got pretty close, but I didn't actually finish because I had a lot going on. And then after that, I just kind of lost my motivation. But it usually helps me get out like 15,000 words in the first like few days, and then I just can't do anymore.
Yeah.
But so it's probably the deadline. I started doing NaNoWriMo when they still did the like when they were still sponsored by CreateSpace. So like after you finish, they would wasn't it like they could CreateSpace would send you a copy of your book? Right? Yeah, and they haven't done that, so I kind of lost the motivation. But I mean, I don't care about that as much anymore, because I mean, that was when I was younger, so I didn't really know publishing was actually a thing that people could do.
Yeah.
So now it's more like the main goal with NaNoWriMo is just finishing. It's not really anything else, just finishing something, which, like I said, I've had a lot of trouble with.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, so do you want to do your next question?
It doesn't matter. You can, you could always go back and forth, like you said.
Okay.
Unless
and like I said, if anyone has questions, ask in chat. So my next question is kind of more niche. It is, which line that you've written do you think people would get tattoos of if you were famous?
That's actually what I spend most of my time thinking about. Honestly, I'm not even. I've had a few people tell me about certain lines that they liked, but I think there's this one comparison that I wrote in my novella Darkness Rise. But I don't think someone would get it as a tattoo. I think that it's a good line, but it's more like a descriptive thing. Mm-hmm. I think my dialogue is what people would really like, but nothing that comes to mind. Like I had my descriptive thing that I was talking about was like, I was talking about when the two main characters are going up into the clouds riding a dragon. And it said like the clouds were like the wispy clouds brushed against my face like butterfly wings or something like that, which someone told me that they liked. I don't know. But mostly my dialogue. Like I had this one line from this one character and he said like, what would you do without me? And it's just like a thing that everyone says, but it meant so much for him. So I don't know. Oh, actually, I have this psychotic character in my one book, and any of her lines, I could imagine
Give
people.
me an example.
Let me think. There was this one where she said, "Are you ready? I've never tortured a wielder before. A wielder in my book is someone who possesses magic," which was a powerful line for her because that was like when the main character realized that things were bad. She says a lot of things about torture. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. Don't really have any exciting lines that come to mind.
Cool. Is it my favorite line I've ever written is from a fan fiction? So I don't know if
you write a lot of fan fiction. So.
I write a lot of look, I write original work too, all the time, plenty of it. Yes, I do write a lot of fan fiction. That is true. How could I not when the stories are so good? Anyway,
oh my gosh, can I just say something, please?
Sure.
I've been reading all this stuff of people saying that they would sue people if they did fan fiction of their books and that they hate when people do that. I'm like,
I would be so flattered.
I know. It really confuses me. Like, I was on Wattpad the other day, because I've said before, like I've said stuff on my blog too. I've been trying to motivate myself to write things by putting a few chapters on Wattpad and getting responses, which sadly hasn't been working out very well. But in the forums, there was this one thing, and it said there was this thread where this person said, what do you think of fan fiction? And then this person said, if someone did fan fiction of my book, I would sue them. And then this other person was like, yeah, it's like, what is, I mean, people aren't getting money for it. And just the fact that someone likes my characters and my plot and everything enough to do that, I just feel like that would be so amazing.
I would love to have someone write fan fiction of something I wrote, and I would read it. I mean, actually, I probably wouldn't read it because then I would want to steal it, and that would be unethical. But I love fan fiction. So the line that is my favorite line that I think, if it weren't from a fan fiction, people would get tattoos of. One of the characters finishes saying something. The character was actually a self-insert of me. So the character finishes saying something, and then it says, she said this, and the void consumed her. And I just like the aesthetic of that line. So I would.
That's nice.
I like it. So we actually have a question in the comments section from Nat B, who asks, hi Nat B. Hi, how do you guys get over anxiety with your writing? Maybe this is just me, but when I write, it's hard for me to post / like my stuff because I'm stuck in my head about the bad quality. LOL.
Yes, I think all writers have this problem. It's another confidence. It's really hard to appreciate your own writing because you're the one who's sitting there writing it and it's coming out of your head. So it's not new and fresh, but that's why it's really good to like take a break and come back and reread your old stuff, because then you can see it from another perspective. And also it's good to get feedback, which I know can be really hard to get. I am in a family with 4 other siblings and then my parents, and my grandparents, well, my grandmother mostly, she reads my books all the time, and she tolerates like all the time. If I write something new, I'll say, "Hey, will you read this?" And she says, "Sure." And it can be really motivating having someone else read your writing, for me at least. But I mean, also then there's the feeling of vulnerability of getting your stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, what helps with the confidence is getting other people's opinions, and then also having an open mind when you're rereading your old writing, because I mean, we're always getting better. It's not like it's always going to be the same. So when you read something you wrote and then you see any inconsistencies or you see something that you wish to do differently, then you're learning from that. So it can be helpful to see mistakes. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if that's a good answer, but here,
No,
you should
make sense. Yeah, no.
I hope.
So, so in talking about anxiety, I have submitted over 200 pieces I've submitted 200 times. Sometimes I would resubmit an old piece, but I've submitted 200 times to different magazines and anthologies, and I've been accepted 10 times. So that's a 5% acceptance rate. And so that means 95% of the time I've heard no, or I've heard nothing at all, because sometimes people don't even, have the decency to write to me and say, thank you for submitting, but we're not accepting your piece at this time, which, would be nice of them. So I have to just, decide for myself, like, is what I'm creating more important to me than the struggle of that creation? Because, see, that's a line someone would get a tattoo of. No, but yes, it is very stressful to write, and it's very nerve-wracking to put it out into the world. But even if it's absolutely terrible, even if it's Alex and Eliza by Melissa De La Cruz, which is the worst book ever written, then you still have created something that did not exist before. And, you did that, and that's pretty cool. And even if you just wrote the word the 400 times, okay, that didn't exist before, probably. So you have to just appreciate that, you're making something, you're probably going to not get exactly what you wanted from it, but you have to keep working, hoping that someday you do.
And if you enjoy it, I mean,
exactly.
That's like it's your thing,
right?
Like for me, I think I've had a lot of self-doubt with my books in the past, but recently it's been a lot easier because I've accepted that I'm a writer and that I want to be a writer, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just kind of doing it. And if people like pick up on the fact that I'm working hard and I'm creating stuff that like Hannah said, HG said, that wasn't there before. I mean, like I said before, it's a godlike act.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I think it's just amazing. I think writing is just one of the most powerful hobbies because you're sending people on these adventures that you're creating. You're putting emotions into their heads, which I mean, I think is really amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and creating characters, you're like creating a person that didn't exist before.
Yeah. I fall in love with all of my characters. It's actually really sad. I like them.
I'm literally in love with most of my characters. Like, I would definitely go on a date with most of my characters. Anyway,
that's because of all characters. It's I was saying the other day, why is it that all characters are way better than real people when they're based off of human nature?
Right.
And then I realized because they wear their best traits where the character can see them. And where with real people, you have to dig deeper. So it's harder to get to know real people than it is.
Yeah, a character will show themselves to you in a way a real person never will.
Mm-hmm. Well, some people, but it's pretty hard to.
But not all people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess I will do an.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. You do a question.
All right. Okay, let's see. The next one is, do you use character sheets?
Do you use character sheets? Yes, sort of. That's my answer. It depends on what I'm writing. Most recently, my original thing was a fiction podcast, and I did use some character sheets for that, but then after that, I wrote a short story, and I didn't use character sheets for that. For me, it depends on how many characters I have and how complex they are. Sometimes I'll shoot for a more complex character. But if I only have like 2 characters, then I'm probably not going to. What about you?
I used to do it a lot, like for every single one, but then it's gotten to the point where I have so many books that I didn't actually finish, and I just have. The other day, I was like cleaning my room because I'm just a messy teenager, and it's writer or not. And I just had character worksheet, not worksheets. I had my character profile things that I make scattered all over the floor, and they were books that I haven't been writing for months. So at this point, I don't really see the point. I'd rather do it. I will write down the things that are important. If they're like H.G said, I'm sorry. If they're complex, then I will write them down. If it's something that I don't think I'll remember otherwise. Or I use Notebook AI a lot, which actually H.G produced, which is really easy. I think it's mostly it's easier to use digital stuff, definitely. Digital software, or I'll write it. I actually usually, if I have a book, I'll have one document open for the actual thing. For the actual book, and then I'll have another one where I do like any plot points or anything that I want to remember about the different characters.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So
we have a question from, I don't even know how to pronounce this. He's Robin. I'm sorry. This is my friend Robin. From Yeri. And it says, I have a really hard time making final decisions. I have a few different versions of a character, and each version has their charm. I can't decide which I should choose. Do you have any tips for me? I know that's a vague and not the smartest question. Babe, that's a great question. I love you. I stan you. Anyway, sorry, this is my really good friend. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna go first because I feel like I have a really good and significant and amazing and intelligent answer to this question. I'm worried I'll forget it if you start talking. So
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in regards to having a couple different versions of the character, my tip would be which one drives the plot the most, because that's like a really hard thing that you have to pick. And I completely understand because I'm not a very plot-driven person. I'm more of a character-driven. I like writing stories that are based around the characters more than based around the plot. But you do have to have a plot. And so pick which version of the character will contribute most of the plot and which one will have the most chemistry with your other established characters, but don't discard the versions that you don't end up using. Save them and then use them in a different story. That's my word of wisdom. Carynn.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a perfect answer. And I also, most of my stories are character driven as well.
Populist Revolt says, press 1 if you want me to throw myself out a 10-story window. Oh my god, no, please don't do that. Whoa. Please don't do that. Populist Revolt, whoever that is. Wow. Don't, please don't. Okay, anyway.
So shall I choose another question?
Yes, choose another question. Populist Revolt, please don't throw yourself out a 10-story window. And the National Suicide Hotline is... Just look it up if you need help. Okay, go ahead, Carynn.
So the next question is like the perfect question because I have a good answer for it, I think. Well, it's not like a super wise
You're
answer.
Still presenting me, just so you know. They're still seeing my face.
Yeah, okay. It's a super obvious answer. Yeah, it says, what's harder, starting a project or finishing a project? Always finishing a project. What? Starting a project for me is so easy because I have all of the inspiration built up, and
hang on,
I don't even see why there could be another.
Whoa, wait. You just said this is a really obvious answer, and then you said the not obvious part of that answer.
Wait, really?
No, it's so much easier to finish something than to start it, because sometimes if you start it, I mean, not always, but in general, like if you start it, then you can have an ending in mind that you can get to. And maybe
But
okay,
for
maybe
me,
finish would be the wrong word, but no, it's easy to start something. It's harder. It's easy to finish something once you've started it because then you feel like you're committed to it. But it's hard to start something because, especially in writing, you know that you're going to have to give so much of yourself to it. And that's like hard. Don't you think?
well, I don't know. I guess we have opposing thoughts on this.
No, this doesn't. But like,
I
but
didn't.
like,
I
but
didn't
like,
know.
but like, but like, but like, but like. So like, if you are starting something, then you're committed to it. And so once it's easy to finish something once you've made that commitment, it's harder to establish that commitment.
For me, it's harder to actually commit. That's the thing. I start so many, as you know me, and you know that I will write 10,000 words in like 2 days, and I'll be like, hey, look at this is my new book. It's gonna be awesome. This is
it's better than any book I've ever written before.
Exactly. And then I will get like so far into it, and then I just have to stop because for me, I'm just like so quick to start new books and new projects, and I like to experiment with new ideas. And then I was like, no, this isn't good. No, I won't be able to keep doing this. And then I just stop. So for me, finishing means that I have to get through the middle, and the middle is just so hard for me. So it's so much easier to start it than to have to get through the whole thing. So I mean, just look at how many projects I've started and then not actually finished.
A lot. It's a lot.
In fact, if you added the word count, I'm pretty sure that you could like make it into a library.
Yeah, probably. Okay, so I have a really funny question because you just mentioned that you write a lot of things. So, what is the worst thing you ever wrote?
Okay. You know, it's hard because I have memories of projects I started writing when I still lived in Castleton,
New
York. And that was a long time ago. We moved away from there to Virginia when I was 9 or 10. And I used to write, I remember I wrote this one book called Chocolate, and it was about a flying puppy. And that was when I was in 5th grade, I think, or maybe it was 4th grade. And I think it's really probably was really bad because I remember that in the beginning, this girl is with her friend at school, and they're going to have this sleepover party, and they're on the bus, and suddenly this flying dog flies into the window, and she's like, did you see that? And her friend's like, no. And then they're at this sleepover, and they see this flying puppy, and it's just, the plot is weird. The characters were exactly the same. My writing, obviously, I was 9 or 10 years old, so it wasn't really good. But I mean, it's memorable, I guess. I guess. My writing must not have been that bad when I was at that age, because I remember my English teacher, he used to tell me all the time that I was going to be a writer. And then in my yearbook, I have a note from him saying, I can't wait to read your novel someday. So, I mean, I must have had at least a little bit of talent, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
I don't know. I have a lot of embarrassing projects. Oh my gosh, nope. I know what my most embarrassing writing project is. It just hit me.
What is it?
The Lighthouse Keeper.
You made me listen to that whole book.
I know. I thought you were enjoying it the whole time.
Oh, good. I convinced you. No, I'm kidding. That's mean. I did like The Lighthouse Keeper. I liked it. I just did not think the premise made sense. And so
it was hard
for me to believe it.
That was a few years ago. I think it was my 2nd or 3rd year doing NaNoWriMo. I did finish that one. It was really bad.
No, it wasn't terrible. I liked your characters that you had in it. And I liked the travel mechanism. So everybody listening to this is confused. So Carynn wrote this book for NaNoWriMo, and the basic premise was there was a boy who lived in a lighthouse, but he could never leave because he was trapped. I don't remember why. And then this girl walked in, and he was like, I'm stuck in the lighthouse and can never leave. And she was like, well, I wouldn't like that to happen to me, so I guess I'm going to leave. And he was like, wait, could you stay with me? And then she turns around, and she's like, he looked so lonely that I decided I would give up my whole life and family to stay in the lighthouse with this total stranger.
Okay, well, I mean, now I feel the need to defend it. Oh my gosh, no. Well, I mean, there are a few things that made it make more sense than that. I mean, technically, she had a foster dad, and her only family was her foster dad.
Okay, but
But yeah, it was
that's
really
better
weird.
than a total stranger in a lighthouse.
And I'm pretty sure the lighthouse was the thing that was keeping it there. Like the lighthouse had, it was really intelligent. So yeah, and then it was supposed to be a romance, and they were like 14, and one of the guy had actually been there for like 50 years, and he was just staying as like a 14 or 15-year-old. So it was a little bit weird.
Hang on a second, because we have another comment from Populous Revolt, and it's very offensive, and I'd kind of.
So there's probably no point in saying it.
Yeah. Everybody can probably see on the chat what has been written. It's horrible. And Populous Revolt, can you please leave the chat and stop making everyone else?
I'm able to actually ban people from the chat. So let's just continue.
Good.
Can you say the question? I'm gonna quickly move on.
Yeah, let's just get that person out. Sorry to everybody else who had to see that, and we're just gonna continue with the comments. So do you have another? Oh, I have to do the worst thing I ever wrote.
Yes.
Do I just have to pick one?
Well, I kind of went over a few, so.
Okay. I want to say the King's Decree. But in all honesty, I actually reread the King's Decree last night, not the whole thing. And it's like terrible, but the King's Decree, by the way, for people who don't know, is a novel I published when I was 14. I self-published it, and it's awful. It's like very pretentious, but it's not horrible. I think maybe the worst thing I ever wrote, I know what it was. It was that Hunger Games story where I took Sherlock, Lord of the Rings, and The Legend of Zelda and mashed them all into the Hunger Games. That was the worst thing I ever wrote. So yeah.
Well, let me see. I'm still in the middle of doing this.
Okay, whoever this person is getting more annoying. Can you please ban them, Carynn?
Yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I guess while Carynn is working on resolving our technical issue with this person in the chat, I'll just keep talking about the King's Decree. So, quick summary of the King's Decree. I wrote it when I was 12, edited it when I was 13, published it when I was 14, regretted it ever since. So, a basic summary of the King's Decree is, it goes like this. So there's a race of elves, and they live in the woods, and all of the elves live in different places scattered around this kingdom of Sildonia. When the king dies, another king is raised to power, and so all of the elves have to attend his coronation to see if he's going to be a new king. Turns out he's going to be a terrible king because he hates all of the elves, and none of us are really sure why. Anyway, he decides that all elves are evil and need to be locked up because he thinks they're going to commit a crime against the nation. We later learn that this is because he has a prophecy that tells him all elves are evil and they're going to commit a crime, but we don't know that until later on in the book when they discover the prophecy. The main character is named Elenia. She's stupid, acts like a 5-year-old, even though she's supposed to be 17. I wasn't 17 when I wrote the book, in case you couldn't tell that. She's trapped in a love triangle between two guys, one of whom is a nice guy, which I mentioned earlier in the stream, but actually turns out to be terrible and evil. The second is an edgy guy named Thornton, who's a warrior, even though he's literally only 18 years old, has killed a bunch of dragons and super edgy and very, very hot, has an 8-pack. Anyway, so Elenia Thornton and all of her friends go to the coronation, where they discover that the king is actually evil and planning to overthrow all of the elves. They manage to get away in time, but he kidnaps a bunch of other people. They get back to their home, find that it's burned, but then they find a magic necklace, which isn't actually magic. It doesn't really do anything significant, but are told that they need to bring it to a different elven tribe before everything goes to hell. They decide to take the magical necklace, which is called the Terranol, but they don't know that later. They decide that they're going to ride all the way to the kingdom. They ride to the kingdom. Elenia has a bunch of tension with her and the two boys. Her friend is named Alia, who's a total badass that doesn't need anybody because her fiance has been kidnapped and doesn't want to fight. They get to the kingdom, city, not kingdom, city. They get to the city, deliver the necklace. The city gets burned and sacked by everybody. Alia gets captured. Elenia and the two boys get away. The two boys both protect Elenia, almost get burned alive, but manage to get away with their lives, even though they don't have the necklace and have only just learned the prophecy and still don't know what's going on. What is going on? I didn't know what was going on when I wrote the book, but I decided to publish it for some reason anyway. They escape. The one boy turns out to be evil. Elenia falls in love with the other boy. Elenia gets captured. The book ends. Did that make any sense?
Well, I've read it, so I think it makes sense to me, and it was a little quick. Okay. I seriously think it was really impressive that you did that at that age. Like, for me, I only started really committing to writing like a year or two ago, and that's when I like realized that it was my thing, and that's what I was going to keep doing. So I think that for you, the experience of actually writing that and publishing it isn't so much about the quality of the actual book. Obviously, in your opinion, I'm just talking about your opinion, not mine.
Yeah.
But I just think that it was obviously it was a stepping stone for you. Like, it helped
you. Nice. Thank you.
What?
That's so nice of you to say. No, I think you're right. I think that The King's Decree definitely was a stepping stone because it was 50,000 words long, and I wrote a sequel that was 30,000 words long before I abandoned it. So it taught me a lot about the writing process and the editing process. I was very lucky to work with Anne Marie Gozalo, who is a published writer and a very good friend of mine. And she was kind enough to offer to beta read it for me. So I was very blessed and fortunate to have that. I had Carynn's input throughout a lot of the process, which I was very fortunate to have, even if her input was mostly, wow, this is an amazing book. That encouraged me. And yeah, it was a great process and it was a lot of fun. And there are some things in that book that I really like that I'll probably reuse. I had one character, Thornton, who was one of the boys in the love triangle, who I think so he had depression, and I didn't really know anything about how to write him back then, but now as somebody who's actually now diagnosed with depression, I think I appreciate him a lot more. And so it's like something I sort of come back to later in life that I wrote in this book that I wrote when I was very young, which is weird. So, I mean, I learned a lot from The King's Decree, and it was absolutely the worst thing I've ever written, but it made me a writer. So there's something to be said from that, I guess.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And the Oscar goes to, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Okay.
So, okay, yeah, that was.
Mm-hmm. Do you have another question?
Yes. Okay. So the next one is, how do you carve out time to write amidst the daily craziness of life?
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You should go first because you have a much crazier life than me, I would say.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you have like, you're at a more advanced level in school and everything, obviously.
Maybe.
Oh, goodness. I write very late into the night when I'm able to, and I write very early in the morning when I'm able to. When I was writing Darkness Rise, my mom, like, she would get up to do like these fitness things before she had to go to work, like exercise. She had like an exercise thing that she did. So I would have her wake me up around 5:30, and I would write until I had to get up to watch my siblings or to do my own stuff. So you don't have to get up early, but for me, I actually found that helped me to concentrate a lot more because I like had just woken up and there was nothing. Like the house was silent. I was like surrounded by basically darkness because it was during the winter. So obviously it didn't get light until pretty late. So I guess it really depends on your schedule and like when you have things that you're doing like planned during the day. So if most of your stuff is in the middle of the day, try to find time in the morning. I know some people aren't good at getting up early, but for me that really helped. So trying that I would recommend. And also if you have to get up early, I wouldn't recommend writing late, but and then I guess it's easier also to write when you're at home most of the time. And obviously I'm homeschooled, so it's easier for me to find time in between other things that I have to do at home. So yeah. And obviously on the weekends, if I get a chance, I will write a lot on the weekends.
Yeah, for me, I actually do write by staying up late. I'm a stay up late, get up early kind of person, and I'm usually running on 3 cups of coffee. So I've only had 1 cup of coffee today, actually, but I did sleep in because I was up until 10:30 last night writing fan fiction for the Penumbra podcast. So yeah. So I work 2 jobs, and I'm about to graduate as a senior, so I don't often have time to write during the day, but I try to work at night because I find that I'm most productive then because I'm alone in the mudroom with the ghost that haunts my mudroom. So no, I'm serious. There's a ghost in my mudroom, but I can get more done. It's great. I have a painting of Jesus that sits next to me while I type, and sometimes I sprinkle salt if the ghost gets really loud, but usually he leave me alone. But, yeah, Jesus.
You remember the one time when I went over to your house because we were writing we have to talk about the Mystic Chronicles.
Oh, we have to talk about the Mystic Chronicles. Okay,
that is necessary.
Let's finish this question and then let's talk about the Mystic Chronicles.
Yeah. Well, I don't really know what else to say about this question, really.
Okay. You like writing in the morning. I like writing at night. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk
I
about
like writing at night. It's hard for me to get up in the morning. I actually write in my head in the middle of the night. I'll get up, I'm in the middle of the night, and then I just figure out. Actually, a lot of times I've planned out the exact lines that I wanted to say. And actually, the other day I woke up after having this dream with this perfect line in my head because I had been stuck in part of one of my books. So I literally jumped out of bed and I ran downstairs. This was obviously before I had bunion surgery and I could actually run. So I ran down the stairs and I opened the document and I quickly typed it in, and it was this beautiful line. And I don't know how my dreams like somehow supplied me with it, but that happens a lot. So yeah.
Okay. One last thing on the topic of when do you write? Am I the only one where sometimes if I'm lying in bed writing a scene, I like mouth the words of the scene to myself?
Yes, I do that
I'm
too.
not the only one. Yes. Okay.
Do you like do facial expressions when you're trying to figure out how to describe them?
Or like if you're like imagining your character pick something up, will you like pick up the object that's closest to you? Yes.
Oh my god.
Okay. So one time I was like thinking about this scene where like a character like I don't know reached over and like touched the other one's face or whatever, and I found I had reached over and touched my pillow because I was like lying in bed and I felt so weird and uncomfortable.
Oh my
But then I was like, I'm the weirdest person on earth, but I'm not the only one. Okay, I feel better now.
But I'll be just sitting in front of my computer and I'm trying to figure out how to describe a scared face, and like my eyes are widening and I'm just like, and my brother's just like,
no, I do that.
What's wrong?
No, I make the facial expressions. Or like if a character is smiling, I'll be smiling while I type, and my mom is like, "Who are you texting?" And I'm like, "Nobody."
Yes, it's so true. Oh my gosh. It's funny because writers are like, we're so much different like as individuals, but we have like these it's insane because for me and for a lot of writers, I know no one actually, other than actually like reading and writing, no one actually really taught you how to like write and to create stories. So you figure it out on your own, or you read like things online. People don't teach you these things, and yet it just means like it's just human nature to like do it ourselves to like figure out how we want to portray these people who don't actually exist. I think it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it is. Cool. So let's talk about the Mystic Chronicles. Yay!
Yes, that's a very long story. Not the Mystic Chronicles itself, but
then you introduce it, what the Mystic Chronicles was, and then I'll give a summary because I feel like I'm less likely to ramble about it than you are. So
well, I don't know. I stutter a lot because I can't figure out.
And I'll give a summary of the story.
Okay, so how we like came to start Mystic Chronicles?
Yeah. So tell everybody what the Mystic Chronicles was.
So
whatever.
It started out as a game when we were probably like, how do you think, like 10 or 11, maybe?
Maybe.
Maybe even younger.
We were young.
Yeah. Well.
So wait. It was around the same time that I first played The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, which I played when I was 11. So around that time.
So I would have been 9, and HG would have been 11. Yeah, so we started out as a game called Sages, and I changed my character so much, so I don't even know what I started out as. But her friends were like, there was the sage of sand and like light, and basically they just controlled the elements.
It was based off the Legend of Zelda game where each sage controlled a different element.
Yeah, so I changed very often. I just decided I was bored with different things and switched on to the next. But then we decided that we were going to try to write a book about it, and we wrote like 2 or 3 chapters and just stopped. And then a few years later, I found it and I said, "Hey, remember this?" And then we decided that we were just going to do it just for fun. And then we wrote this whole book, and we planned out this whole series, and we worked on it for 2.5 years. Yeah, 2.5 years. And then we decided that it did not have enough action, and we were just sort of leading up to the other books. So then we started another rewrite, and that was a lot more recent. That was, I think, last year or early this year. I can't remember.
It was the end of last year.
The end of last year. So we started writing it again, but Hannah's really HG is really. I'm very, very sorry. I am so used to calling you Hannah. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're saying I'm really busy. So.
Yeah, and so we decided that we were just going to. Well, mostly. I mean, I love it so much, but yeah, we have a lot going on. So after all of that time, but we might do something with it in the future.
Yeah, so I'll give a plot summary.
Okay.
So the basic premise of the Mystic Chronicles is it sounds very typical when you first hear about it, but then the story is actually like very unlike anything you read before. So the basic premise is a school for people who have magic powers. Okay, that sounds exactly like Harry Potter, X-Men, Umbrella Academy, School for Good and Evil. There's a lot of stories for schools of people with magic, but the catch is that each of these people has a different power, and there's a set of 25 powers, and so that power remanifests every other generation. So like the people that used to have the powers are teaching it to the younger people, and so they're called the mystics. And so we focus on like 6 or 7 of them in the first book, and then we switch the focus in the second book. But the basic story of the first book was that one of the girls who was my character, her name was Hygeia, and I loved her. Her name was Hygeia. Her and one of her friends found that the former mystics, that's the people who had the powers before them, had actually had a revolt where one of them turned against the others. And the reason why they brought all of these people to the school was they were trying to teach them Yuns to keep a revolt from happening again. And it seems like, they're going to turn on each other. And this was going to unfold throughout the series, that like, it seems sort of Avengers-y, that like some of the powerful people turn on each other. And so there's like a group of good and a group of bad. Should I tell them the big twist? There's only 3 people. So, but then the big twist halfway through was that you find out that actually none of the students are evil. The evil people were the teachers all along. And it was going to be epic and like mind-blowing and really cool. Yeah. And basically they were going to like be manipulating the students as pawns, and it was going to be so cool. And we gave it up, but because we had to. And I think that I do think we are both probably going to come back to the Mystic Chronicles at some point.
We have to. I mean, there's so much there.
Personally, I'd like to explore it in a fiction podcast form, but
yeah, for me, it's just, I don't know. It's hard to think of it that way.
I think the Mystic Chronicles is such an epic story that I think that we're maybe not even at the place where we're capable of fully reaching its potential yet. But yes, it was an amazing story. It was so much fun to write. Let's just talk about a couple of the characters from it.
It would be cool. I mean, maybe you wouldn't want to do this, but I was just thinking it would be cool if at some point during this we read something of our writing. We could always do a little part of the Mystic Chronicles, unless you didn't want to.
Yeah, let's both read our first chapter of the Mystic Chronicles, the original draft, because I think our first chapter was pretty good.
Wait, the original?
Not the original.
Oh, the one
second original.
Okay, the second original. Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'm pulling it up right now. So you read your first chapter. Please remember, guys, that we wrote this like 2 years ago, so our writing styles are not up to our usual par if you've read things from either of us before. But we do our best. So the first book was called Power Unchained, which I thought was a pretty sick title.
Yeah, we did a big vote with our families trying to figure out which title we wanted to use. I know there was also, there were a few others. I don't know if I can remember any of them. I know the second book was going to be called Tide Rising or something.
When the Tide Turns, yeah. So do you want to read the...
Yeah.
Do you want to read the prologue and then chapter 1?
I'm trying to get to it right now.
All right, I have it pulled up, so how about I'll read the prologue and then you can just...
Yeah, which is the first chapter? Which character is it?
It starts with Thomas Ember, and then it switches to Brooke.
Okay,
so Thomas Ember was principal in this. He was like the leader of the school.
Why don't you do the prologue and first chapter, and I'll just do the second.
Okay, it's kind of long, so let's say we'll do this now.
Piece of it? Just a piece of it?
Oh, somebody... Wait, we have 2 more comments. Somebody said, actually, artists do the facial expressions too. Oh, that was Robin. And then Acacia Barnes said, hello all. Hello, Acacia. I am probably butchering your beautiful name, and I'm very sorry. But if anybody has comments, please keep leaving them in the side chat. We're just going to read samples of this writing that we created together.
And we could always,
more than happy
for each part, we can talk about it a little, I guess.
Yeah, we're more than happy to go back to the question format. But this live stream will probably continue for about another half hour. So if you're thinking that you're ready to jump out, that's fine. We'd love it if you stuck on, though. Okay, so I will read the prologue. The prologue we wrote together, and then we alternated chapters afterwards. So it would be Carynn would write the even-numbered chapters, and I wrote the odd-numbered chapters. And then a couple chapters we wrote together. And then we'd edit the other person's chapter. And the way we did it was we each had, I think, 3 characters in the first book. And so we would only write from our own characters' perspectives, except at one point where we switched characters, but that's a little complicated. So it was very much a collaborative group effort. Okay, so this is the prologue, which we wrote together. Okay, prologue. And remember, it's not perfect because it never was finished. Okay. Thomas Ember entered his office and leaned against the cherrywood door. Pride welled up inside of him as he swept his eyes over the room. This was all his now. The office, everything in it, the title, the prestige, all his. The election to choose him as principal of this school was unanimous. This school to educate young students, like the boy he once was. So unsure and afraid, but no more. He would see to it the young mystics would never be unsure again. Ember glanced at the candle on his desk. After he lit it with a flame from the tip of his finger, the pale orange glow crept along the papers he had spread out on the desk surface. Principal Ember, he thought with a grin as he shuffled through these. Head of this school for mystics, all 25 of them under my guidance, as I help them to control the magic. Still considering the sound of his title, he picked up one of the papers. He sat there for a while and scanned through the pages. Now and then a flash of pride popped into his mind. Principal Ember, the greatest leader in education of all time. Thomas? Thomas jumped at the sound of a voice in the doorway. With a flush, he regathered himself. Yes? Ellen Tenebris came into the room and glanced at the pages spread before him. The room darkened a little at her entrance. I love her. Side note, I love her. Anyway, have you begun to read the profiles? She asked. The room darkened a little at her entrance. I read that already. Thomas flickered the lamp on his desk. Indeed, I have. Thomas glanced down. So you have discovered 21? Ellen nodded, but I'm sure Anne will find the others soon. Thomas smiled, then looked at his watch. Ah, he stood up. Are you here to summon me for our meeting? Ellen smiled and swept out of the room. Thomas flicked off the lamp, pinched out the candle between his fingers, and followed. The rest of Thomas's and Ellen's colleagues sat around one of the tables in what would soon be the cafeteria. Thomas greeted them and then stood at the head of the table, palms pressed to the surface. To business, he said. As there are 20 of us, you will each be assigned one student to write to, while I, he added with pride, will write the other 4. And why can't you type them up yourself and make adjustments depending on the different students? Ellen's husband, Roger, asked. We need each letter to be unique, to attract each student, depending on their element, personality. Which means we'll need research, said the mystic of philosophy with a smile. Naturally. I wish the others decided to help us. Everything was always so much easier and more entertaining with all of us together. A few of them nodded. They're off with their own lives, Thomas, said Ellen. You couldn't expect them to change everything they've been doing, simply for... You all did, Thomas interrupted. And I want you to know how truly grateful I am for it. He paused, searching for the words. We were all as these young men and women are now, he continued finally. We must ensure they learn how to use their powers without the fear of them, the way we once all did. He looked around the room. Thank you all for being here to help me succeed in that. You are all such good friends, and I know you'll be amazing co-workers as well. Thomas coughed. Anyway, let's begin. 18 months later, and this is where you'd hear dramatic music.
That was
a prologue.
It's so strange hearing it after all this time. I haven't read it in a very, very long time.
I read some of it the other day, but not this version.
Yeah, I'm only finding the other version.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you going on to our shared email, or are you on your own email?
Ah, yes. Okay.
Remember we did a shared account. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird hearing. It's like hearing it, and it doesn't sound like anything that I can remember. I mean, I remember the basic gist of it, but
yeah, I forgot the exact language.
It's really good.
It's way better than I remember it being. I would say that if I were writing it now, I would definitely give Thomas more personality, and probably try to make him sound. He sounds like formal, but also informal. So I would probably fix that.
Yeah, make it more.
One or the other. Yeah,
Mhm.
but
I
it's
did
actually a
see
lot.
one thing. It was sort of like an in between the lines kind of thing. Uh, it seemed like he had this other trait that I didn't actually see before, which is that like when he's fond of other people, which I guess is the word he would probably use. He's not very good with showing his feelings completely. Like he obviously seemed kind of embarrassed about that, which I think was really subtly put in there. But also, I think it's a good trait and it really fits his personality.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one that brought this all together, right? So by starting with him, it was pretty ambitious of us. I'm not actually sure why we did that. But
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the new version, we don't start with him, right? We start with a group of them. He's there and Ellen's there and a couple of the others are there, but it's not solely his
Yeah.
point. Anyway.
I'm trying.
Interesting. Okay, so do you want me to read how long is chapter 1? So
I'm not
chapter
sure. Maybe we
1.
should just read a portion of each one.
Yeah, okay. So chapter 1, I'll just read so chapter 1 is one of the students arriving at the school. We decided that we were going to showcase the arrival day from a couple different students' perspectives. But then it goes into the orientation. So I'll read Brooke's arrival but not read the orientation, and then you can read Camille's arrival. Does that work?
All right. Yeah, that's good.
So, background about my character. This is Brooke Mannings. She's one of my favorite characters that I've ever made, maybe. She's the mystic of water, so she has water powers, and she's pretty cool. And you might notice that her name is Brooke. So when we first started this story, we decided we wanted all of the characters' names to somehow allude to their element. So Principal Thomas Ember, Brooke Mannings, the girl who does light is named Angelica. So little things like that. So yeah.
So I guess at first we just did that more for like entertainment, and then later on we went more into the science of it. Like we actually had a conversation. It's later on in the book, so we wouldn't be reading it now. Where we mentioned that like one of the students asks one of the teachers, and he says that it's merely a matter of coincidence.
Yeah, we tried to like explain it. We don't do it for all of the students, but like we do it. What are some others that you have? And by the way, you might want to show your own face while you say this, not me.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm still trying to get to the document.
You're good. What are some of the other ones? We had the girl who like control emotions. Her last name is Soul.
Yeah.
The girl you have who does science. Her name's Camille Monera, and Monera is one of the. What is it?
She was originally science, but then we realized that was really broad. So
I don't know what we changed. We changed her to something, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we ended up changing her to animals for the rewrite, but we never ended up rewriting.
Well, we never got to her, but Monera was one of the animal kingdoms, right? Or scientific kingdoms.
Monera?
I don't know science. I'm not a scientist. I'm a radio.
Okay, I finally got into the document. That took a while.
Awesome.
Oh, wait a minute. This is another
Robin is heading off. Bye, Robin. All right. Let's see. All right. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. By the way, if you do have to leave, you can come back and watch the rest of this later because it is going to go up on YouTube. So.
And for anyone who's gotten here more recently, we answered some questions in the beginning. I think you can go back to that and watch it, and then go back to the live.
You can go back while it's streaming, but you can definitely go back afterwards.
Okay, and obviously now we're talking about a book that we wrote together a few years ago.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna read the section where Brooke arrives at the school. All right. Chapter 1. A small blue Skylark car, that's way more descriptive than I normally would be. A small blue Skylark car drove into the lot outside of the school. In the driver's seat sat Brooke Mannings, formerly of Pleasantville, California. She wasn't sure what to call her new home, or what she would experience here, but it was something new and undiscovered, and that was good enough for her. She moved the gear into park, turned off the radio, and leaned her forehead on her arm draped across the wheel. I'm ready, she told herself. This is what I've been waiting for. I'm away from my old life now. And, according to the letter which had brought her here, a bright new one was ahead of her. Still, it was a new place. Some butterflies in the stomach were natural, but she pushed them down. She drew a deep breath and then released it. "I'm ready," she repeated, but aloud. She refreshed her lipstick in the visor's mirror, swung open the door, and climbed out. Brooke strolled from the parking lot to a brick walkway bordered by sloping gardens and hitched her purse up as she went. The letter had directed her to wait until after the orientation to move her suitcases, since she would get her dorm number from the counselor's office after the principal's welcome. Not that I brought much anyway. A quick glance around revealed several gorgeous stone buildings scattered around an emerald field in the distance, with the forest she drove through noticeable behind them. The flowers in the garden were all as vibrant as the grass. Some circled statues or fountains. Brooke reached out and placed a hand in a stream of water and tossed it into the air. She smiled as it rained down on her, then collected it back in her hand and tossed it up again. Oh, here comes my favorite character. "Wow," said a sarcastic voice behind her. Brooke turned around to see a pretty girl with choppy black hair looking at her. "You must be the Mystic of Water?" She licked her bright orange lips. "Luosol, Mystic of Morale." "Brooke Mannings." Brooke felt a little uneasy as the girl looked her up and down, in an obvious critique of her outfit. Seeming satisfied, the girl studied her nails for a minute, then looked at Brooke. "The blue car that pulled in, is that your ride?" "Yes." "It looks old." "It's vintage." Luo considered this, then waved a hand towards her own vehicle. "Mine too, I think. Like it?" Brooke looked at the indicated orange motorcycle. "Yes, it's pretty." "Thanks, my ex gave it to me." Luo winked. He never saw it coming. Brooke started. "Sorry, what? Did I say that out loud? Oh, shoot, I left my jacket on the handlebar." Without another word, Luo sped off. Creepy, Brooke thought. She continued up the walkway, up to the school's main class building which held the auditorium. Orientation should be there, she remembered, fishing around in her purse for the letter. Maybe she would need it to get in. She looked up, and then stopped dead in her tracks. A brick building, both tall and wide, loomed above her. Along the enormous oak doors there were symbols of the different powers. Brooke saw blocks of ice and stone, coals, a glass brick full of liquid, a taxidermy bird in a case, a small candle burning in another. She reached out and touched the ice, which, though in the sun, was still solid. She spread out her fingers and closed her eyes. The ice melted and then became solid again. And with a smile, Brooke started into the school. Jesse. I itched my nose a lot during that. It's driving me crazy. I have foundation on and it's very itchy.
This is so annoying. I had it loaded and now it's not responding, and I've been doing it the same time.
I guess while we still load it, I'll talk about that chapter a little bit, though. That chapter I did not spend as long on as some of the later chapters, and I think it really shows. But nevertheless, it's a cool story.
Yeah, it's making me want to write it again.
Yeah, it was fun. So the story. I'm itching my nose so much. So the story that we came up with for the edition that you guys are hearing was like very traditionally like a school. The remake that we had planned was going to be more Hunger Games style, where they were going to basically be like released into school grounds, and they would have to do like a battle royale with their powers to see who the top 10 people were each month, and they would do like classes, but it would be more training, and then the top 10 each month would get to like have special living quarters kind of thing. Yeah, it was gonna be cool. Somebody is writing stuff in the comments, so they say, "Oh yeah says, give me your number, cutie, God is alike, call me." "Oh yeah, I don't know what you mean. God is not alike. God is a woman." I had to, I'm sorry. Anyway, Ariana Grande. Anyway, did you find it, Carynn? Hello? Carynn is not responding, so I guess you're stuck
Sorry
talking.
about that. It just came off.
Oh, there you go. Okay, did you get it yet?
Sorry, I don't know what happened with my Wi-Fi. It just shut off.
Did you hear what I had just said, or did you lose?
No, I lost it completely, but I am now into the document, so.
Just to catch you up, somebody in the comments said, "Give me your number. God is alike. Call me, cutie." I told the person that they're incorrect. God is not alike. God is a woman, as Ariana Grande says. So let's go. Did you find it yet, or?
Yes, no? I am on it. So, okay, here we go.
So, wait, you're still presenting me, so present yourself instead.
Okay.
I want to see your beautiful face.
I'm very sorry that it just went off. I don't know why that happened.
All right, so introduce your character and then read your chapter.
Okay, so this is Camille Monera, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing her last name right. It's she's named after one of the kingdoms. This is loading very slowly. I hope it's still working. And it just disappeared again. But basically, Camille grew up in the Amazon, which we never really actually got her background story straight. I don't think.
Parents were researchers, right?
Yeah, and I think that we ended up deciding that they found her, like, is she like one of like a tribe or something in Brazil?
Yeah, she was from like an indigenous group.
Yeah. So they took her in, I guess, and they're researchers studying animals in the Amazon. So she, like I said before, she was originally the mystic of science, and so in this one, I guess she's still science.
Mm.
And now I can't get it to work again. So my Wi-Fi is really bad. So let me see. It's still loading right now, but what do you want to do until then?
I guess you can talk about Camille. You can talk about the remake. You can talk about.
How about we could always say something about something happened that like created the whole series that fit everything together. Like we just kept having these perfect things that seemed like coincidences that connected all of our plot holes. It was first there was the girl from Switzerland, the mystic from Switzerland, the mystic of dreams.
Yes.
What was her name again?
Annalise.
Annalise, yes. And basically she'd been coming back, not reincarnating. She kept falling back to sleep, and whenever she was needed again, she would wake up. So her power it's like lucid dreaming, but she can actually go places while she's sleeping, but no one else can see her, and she can't actually change things. She can just see things. So that was helpful for her a lot. In what we had, the name of the game is Battalion. Oh my god. Do you remember? The name of the game is Battalion.
Yeah. So the thing with the Mystic of Dreams was each of the mystics was the power had originally belonged to someone else, and then the power would leave that person and go to someone else. But the Mystic of Dreams was always the same person. So she would, once whatever she was supposed to complete was done, she'd fall asleep, de-age to however young she got, and then wake up and start all over again until whatever her task was supposed to be that time was accomplished. So like all of the other students get to the school, and then she doesn't show up until I think a couple weeks in, and so her memory is gone because she's de-aged, but she was actually married to Principal Ember, right? Mm-hmm. In her past self before she fell asleep, and so it was really cool.
I think it loaded.
Okay, let's hear it. Camille.
All right. Hopefully it doesn't stop working again. Let's see. Okay. Every time I try to go out of this.
Okay, so this person says, my name is Nick Jer and I'm Jewish, even though I hate money. I play soccer for fun every Tuesday, even though the people attending the funeral hate that I'm there. Thank you for sharing all of that with me. I didn't want to know any of it.
Okay, I think this is about to work.
Finally working? If you don't have any comments or questions, please stay out of the chat. Let's just say that. If you do have questions,
because I'm able to remove people from the chat. Okay, so finally this is working. Okay.
Okay, Camille.
All right, Camille. Here we go. Okay. Camille Monera loved science. It was her passion, her hobby, and her life's commitment. In her eyes, the science hidden in everything was clear. Every time she saw the waterfall near the balcony of her treehouse, Camille could nearly see the water molecules falling. When she studied the insects that crawled on the trees, she saw the miraculous way they were each built, with different parts. When she looked at the rocks that lay by her dad's helicopter platform, she knew they were full of amazing minerals, and each was created in a different way. So when she received the letter inviting her to the training school for mystics, a thrill ran through her. She had always known that she was special. who else could use their eyes to see microscopic creatures? But she had never known that it would give her such amazing opportunities. She could finally show everyone all that she knew and find out how her scientific abilities could help the world. Powers no one else in the universe had, the letter said, except for the mystic of science who came before her, whose powers would soon fade, making Camille the only mystic of science alive. Camille grew up in the Amazon with her parents. Their job was to look for new animals and plants. At the end of each month, or after they made a vital discovery, Camille and her parents went down to the big satellite dish near their home and uploaded their findings. Her parents taught Camille everything she knew about science, but their knowledge was limited, and she'd recently become more aware of that. The rainforest was so rich with resources and interesting creatures that work never ran out, and so they never left. The only times that she could remember were when her mother was ill and after a snake bit her and her father. Also, just a side note, a lot of aspects of both my writing and also my method of writing have changed since then.
Yeah,
so
I was thinking that.
Like I would usually do a lot more research, which obviously for this there wasn't very much research done. It's sort of made me aware of that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So a lot of this doesn't make sense to me now. Let's see. Both times they took a helicopter, which despite her fears, Camille listed among her favorite things to do after exploring and reading. As Camille grew apart from human civilization, she was nervous she wouldn't be able to make friends at the school. In her whole life, she only talked to her parents and to her grandmother, who visited rarely, and her monkey, Chapo. He was a funny little thing Camille found when she was 12 while seeking out a rare and exotic frog. Then, out of nowhere, she felt something big and hairy land on her shoulder. She screamed and pushed it off in fear that it was a tarantula. As much as she loved everything science, she'd rather read about arachnids rather than have them crawling on her. But when she turned to see what she had pushed off, she saw a little baby monkey lying on the ground. Oh, she picked it up and snuggled it in her arms. I'm sorry, she whispered, and she stroked the creature's head. I didn't mean to hurt you. Her parents thought it would be good for her to have a friend. She loved him more than anything, except for her parents, of course. Now 15, Camille sat in her treehouse and prepared to leave for the academy. She grabbed all of the science textbooks her grandmother ever brought her. Microbiology, physiology, zoology, botany, chemistry, biology, and stuffed them into her bag. Chapo jumped down from a tree and crawled up onto her shoulder. Camille laughed and patted his tiny head. She felt bad to leave him, but this was an important time for her. Who knows, maybe my whole life has led up to this. She wondered about the things she'd do, the friends she'd meet. She looked down at the little monkey, whose sad eyes indicated that he could sense a change. It's okay, I'll be back before you know it. Chapo cooed and scaled her arm to sit on her shoulder. Camille laughed and picked him up from under his arms. Oh, Chapo, she murmured, I can't take you with me. You understand that, don't you? You've always understood me. He did understand, but he didn't like it. He squeaked and then jumped off of her shoulder into a nearby tree. Camille bit her lip. Well, he'd forgive her at some point. She finished packing her bag and swung it over her left shoulder. Camille set her bag down on the balcony and went inside through the sliding wood door. Her parents were talking in the kitchen. They looked up when she entered, and her dad said, Are you ready to go, Chimp? Camille smiled at the old nickname she received when she was little, and once the name had stuck. And once name just stuck. Yeah, that's another one of those things. Yeah, I'm ready. I was coming to see when we're leaving. Her dad shrugged. I guess we'll just have a quick bite to eat and then we'll head out. Camille nodded and went to the pantry. No, you just sit down and relax, her mother said. I'll get you something. As she set a plate of food down on the table before Camille a minute later, she added, I'll miss you, you know that? I know, Mom, Camille said, taking her hand. I'll miss you too. It was mid-morning when they left. Camille grabbed her bag, said her goodbyes to her mother and Chapo, who finally made an appearance, and then went outside into the sticky rainforest air. It wasn't a long walk before they came to the helicopter pad, and went through the big wire gate to the transport. Oh my gosh. Yes, it would be a long flight, but I can't wait to see the academy. I wonder what it will look like. After a long ride, which I probably would have done more of nowadays, they finally arrived at what appeared to be a military base. Wait, what? Camille looked around in confusion at the strange buildings enclosed by a thick wire fence. Dad, she asked, where are we? Camille's father shrugged. This is where the school is supposed to be located. Well, not exactly. It should be past those trees. Together, they passed a thick cluster of trees and broke into a huge clearing. Camille squinted as her eyes adjusted to the light after the trees, and then her eyes grew wide. Stone buildings were scattered about, the largest of these near the center of the clearing. A tall blue tower stood on the far side near the woods. Vines crept up its sides. She couldn't see how far back the field went, but she guessed that it was far. Do you want me to walk with you? Camille's dad asked. She shook her head. This place is for mystics like me. I also feel like she wouldn't really understand what mystics were at that point. I'd like to finally do something by myself, she added silently. I want to be a part of something new, on my own. He nodded, understanding what she meant. Camille hugged him tightly, not quite ready to let go. Bye, Dad. I love you. Camille's father smiled and ruffled her hair. You too, chimp. Have a great year. Camille watched him go back into the trees and then turned to face the clearing again. With the sound of the helicopter behind her, she stepped forward into the sun. I hope she didn't step into the sun. And an hour, yeah, Drake could handle that. An hour later, Camille found herself walking down the hallway of the dormitory building with a pounding heart. She repeated her dorm number to herself as she scanned the passing doors for it. As she walked down the hall, her heart pounding inside of her chest, which I just said. Dorm number 5, dorm number 5. Ah, she took a deep breath and then knocked on the door. After a pause, an accented girl's voice, Scottish, Camille noted, called, okay, I don't know how to do Scottish. Coming. I have no idea, I'm sorry. Camille heard footsteps, and then the door swung open, and a head of red hair poked out. The girl was Camille's age, or possibly a bit older. Green eyes looked her up and down. Can I help you? I'm sorry, I'm not going to do the accent. Can I help you? Camille nodded and bit her lip. This was the first non-adult she had ever talked to. This is my dorm. I guess we're roommates. Camille fumbled with the folder in her hand. Oh, unless I got the wrong room, but I think this is the right one. I was sure that the girl laughed. Well, this is dorm 5. Is that yours? Camille nodded. Okay, well, come in, the girl said, and moved aside for Camille to enter. Once she was inside, Camille's roommate put her hand out. I'm Hygeia, she said. HG's favorite.
I love her.
Camille looked down at Hygeia's hand in confusion. You're a bit of a strange duck, aren't you? Hygeia asked, drawing her hand back. And that's the end of the chapter.
She's great. I love Hygeia.
Yeah.
Mystic of healing.
Rereading that's really weird.
It is, because we've both changed so much as writers. Like, I noticed so many things that I would have definitely told you to change, or that I would have changed myself, or that you would have probably told me to change. It's crazy.
It is. Wow. So,
does anybody have any final questions for us, I guess?
I think there was one more from my blog, so.
All right, let's take that.
I guess we should do the last one. Yeah, I'm just getting into it. So if anyone else does have any questions, we would love to answer them.
Yes, we would. So this has been really fun, by the way, so we should do this again sometime.
Yeah, next time we will know how to do it in the beginning, so it won't take half an hour.
So it will not take half an hour, hopefully. But even also, in case it does, start having it later.
I know that we probably shouldn't stay on too much longer because we didn't plan on it being very long. But did we want to talk about sentence structure a little bit? Because I know we talked about that, how we there's the one thing you were telling me about that author who you read about recently who
yes. Okay. Yeah, sentence structure is the hardest thing you're going to have to do as a writer, and also the most important. Because your story needs to have a good rhythm. And so that's something I'm noticing in the Mystic Chronicles that is better than I expected. I would have thought our sentence structure would be terrible, but I thought it was actually pretty good. It was a little clunky in places, but it was consistent with not being too long or too short.
Yeah, there's a pretty balance.
Yeah, you don't want your sentences to be mostly really long and flowy or mostly really short and choppy. You want that to have a good balance. So
yes. Yeah, sentence structure is important because even though it feels like when you're actually reading, you're reading about the characters and the plot and everything, the book itself is made up of all of those sentences. So it's important to not distract the reader from the actual story. So it is good to have a good balance of shorter sentences, and it's better if you have more action-oriented scenes, definitely to have shorter sentences so the reader can move along it faster. They can read it faster so they can feel more they're going at the same pace as the reader. And then longer sentences for things that are meant to be more descriptive and stuff. Oh, also description I actually had someone ask in my blog when you should do description, because they were saying that they didn't want it to distract from the action. So when you're writing action, it can be hard to describe things without slowing down the pace. So what I like to do is I use descriptive words to talk about where the place is in my action, like in action tags. Like, so if you had, let's say you were doing a fight scene and you wanted to say something about the fact that they're in a forest, and for some reason the reader doesn't know that they're in a forest, you can use that during the action. So while they're doing something, while the character's doing something, they may interact with the surroundings. So I think it's better to, when you're describing your surroundings, to have your character actually interact with them instead of describing them separately from the character. If that makes sense.
No, I love that. I would say you should describe like settings, but you should show a character's emotions. And in regards to action, like Carynn said, I would still not remove descriptions altogether, but I would remove visual descriptions, because in a lot of action, you don't tend to be looking at your surroundings. I think maybe you would describe like the pounding of feet, or and you would use the sounds and the smells and maybe the tastes, like if they taste blood or whatever. Like in very don't rely on.
There's actually a really good example of that. My dad and I are writing a book about Peter Pan and Neverland and stuff. It's like our own take on it. And in the beginning of my dad's one chapter, he did a really good job of that, I think. If I can just get into it really quickly, I think it's a really good example, because he did, when you were saying about the footsteps, that reminded me of it. But maybe let me just say the other question.
Sure.
So that you can start talking about it while I pull that up.
Sounds great.
They said, what's your opinion on publishing through Amazon?
Ooh, good question. I have published through Amazon. I think it is not for the faint of heart. It's very hard, and their customer service rep is awful. I had to navigate it at 14, and it's not very good. And their hold music just sucks. I still can hear it. It sounds like they recorded it through a tin can. Anyway, they have the second worst hold music in the world. Worst hold music in the world goes to Cracker Barrel, but I digress. Working with Amazon is really not for the faint of heart. You have to be willing to do a lot for yourself, and I was able to do it at 14. I created a cover, albeit a very bad cover, wrote up a summary, did the formatting myself. It was all really bad, but I did it. And so if you're willing to put in a ton of time, however, I don't really think that the amount of time that you put in is worth it unless you already have a marketing strategy, because Amazon doesn't help you with marketing at all or anything. All it does is put your book up for sale. And so marketing it, actually getting people to buy it. Let me put it this way. Publishing through Amazon will get you copies of your book. It will not get copies of your book to other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. One thing that I really do like to do through Amazon, like I have in the description, my short story Precipice. If you're publishing ebooks, then Amazon is definitely what I would suggest Amazon as the way to go. It's very easy. It has a really helpful, easy to navigate user interface. They have an app you can download to actually set up your ebook, which I thought was really nice. And you can publish it. You can publish really easily. So for me, that's what I'm going to be doing with short stories, because it's just so easy to do. And I mean, I'm hoping to build up a collection of short stories. So it really depends what your project is. And for me, if I actually did a novel at this point, I do think I would try to go with traditional publishing, because it's just much better after you've gone through it. It's harder, obviously, to get into, but after that, I think it's a lot easier and a lot better.
Right. Agreed.
Also, I did pull this up. There was a little part that I really liked that he did.
All right, let's hear it.
This is the beginning of it's in the beginning of the first chapter. And it's funny because when we first started this, I just asked my dad to start writing something with me. We didn't actually know that we wanted to keep doing it. And he definitely wasn't sold on it because he hasn't written fiction since he was a teenager. So I don't even know what he's going to think of me reading this, but I'm just going to read the first paragraph.
No, won't hurt him.
Yeah, it's true. So this is the first paragraph. The vessel surged ahead, with groanings from the weathered riggings and mast. The last portion of a voyage that seemed to have lasted an eternity now depended on minutes and seconds of crucial wind and chance to bring them within proper distance for the cannons. Jim bellowed his orders to his men who knew their requirements before they were ordered. Each man rushed at their work with inadequate time to bring their task to completion. Sails billowed in the wind, and the hollow knocking of heavy leather boots running about the deck rang out in crazy commotion.
That's got a really nice rhythm.
Yeah, I think I like the way he did it in the end with the footsteps. It just showed that everyone was running around without doing the action. So that was more of a description. It was sort of the opposite of what I was saying. It's more of a description without saying the action. So it's describing the fact that they're all running around, but without saying that.
They're all running around. That's nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, I guess that's a good thing to end on, do you think?
Yeah, unless anyone else has anything else to ask.
Yeah. If you have a final question, speak now. The guy said, my dad owns Amazon. It's school night. Go to bed. Joke's on you. We're both homeschooled. If your dad owns Amazon, can you tell him to start paying taxes? Because if you've listened to my political podcast, you will know that I am all for rich people paying taxes. So anyway, so final word of advice that I'm going to give to new writers is, I'm not going to say something cliche like follow your dream or like all you have to do is keep writing. I'm going to say that my final piece of advice for first writers is let yourself hate your writing, because if you always feel that you have to be in love with your writing, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. You are capable of creating good things, but you're also capable of creating really, really terrible things. And you probably will write a lot of really boring and uninteresting and badly written things. And that is so important, because if you don't write those things first, you'll never learn from them to write good things. So don't feel pressured to love your writing. And especially don't feel like you have to love it because you created it. I would get in this mindset where I would feel like, well, if I'm not advocating for my writing, then who will be? And I couldn't acknowledge that my writing wasn't actually worth advocating for because it wasn't very good yet. So let yourself hate your writing, let yourself grow from your writing, and you will get to a point where you love it. Final thoughts from you, Carynn?
Well, I do agree with what H.G said. I think it's also important to accept your writing style and know that like it might change, but I'm not like, I don't mean writing style like on paper. I mean your different accepting who you are as a writer and realizing that if you want to be a writer, then you have to make it happen. That's what I mean to say. I'm doing it in a really roundabout way, but yeah, I don't really know.
Great. No, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you want to hear more from me, you can go to hgwarrender.com, where I have a blog, which I don't update very often because as a writer, the thing I hate doing most is actually getting some productive writing done. But I also am on Archive of Our Own, but I'm not telling you where to find me, because if you know where to find me, chances are you're here already. Or you can follow my podcast, which is The Way She Sees It podcast, and it is on iTunes and it is on Podbean.
Okay, and for me, obviously, there's Precipice, which I mentioned a lot of times, but never actually talked about. And that's also linked in the description, as well as my blog, Writer's Block, which is without a C, writersblock.net. And you can also follow me on Goodreads in the link, but that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So I hope we can do something like this again.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me.
It was fun.
Yeah. All right.
So I guess that's it.
I guess that is it. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, Carynn.
Good luck with your own writing adventures.
Yep. And same to everyone else. Bye.